Here we are once again with Brother Neil Frazier, aka Metamorphosis, as he helps us to go through our own metamorphosis from the ignorance that many of us had and possessed. And I'm getting a phone call in the middle of the show. This is the guy upstairs. Let me just answer him.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Brother Lance.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, okay, I see.
Brother, give me a second.
Okay.
But that's one of the brothers here doing some work. Whenever he leaves, he lets me know. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so how things going? I talked to you a little earlier.
Yes.
Looking well as always.
Everything's going smooth. Good. You know, when you have a thought to do something, like not to tell it all, but there's some things I'm going to have done here tomorrow. And there's something a few things I wanted to get before tomorrow came. And it got a little late, and I just had enough time. But mentally, I mapped it out, and I got the A-OK. I said, I'm going to do this. As soon as I went out, the van came. As soon as I got down, they had what I want. I went to another store, it had what I want. Went out, boom, the other van came, boom. I got back in record time. So I feel good about that. Whenever something is in your destiny to happen, don't hesitate when you get that feeling. It's like a fighter.
That's a good point.
When he's in a boxing match, he does not say to the trainer when he sees the opening, oh, hold on, opponent. Let me see if my trainer says
let me check with my trainer,
Right, because the opening is not going to be there anymore. When you see it, you seize it. You see what I mean?
Yes, that's what I live point. By.
Exactly. Yeah. Instincts.
And you know, all of the great ones have that. Because at the end of the day, if you have to stop and get instructions for something, then you have already lost the battle, because now you're always going to be dependent on that source. You know, sort of like you become dependent on it to make decisions that you should be making.
That's right.
And, you know, that kind of fits in real good with the brother we're going to discuss today. I tell you, man, every week it's like reliving. It's like there's a part of life that passed you by that you knew was there, but you never really delved deep into it. And certainly today, Dr. Vivien Thomas is somebody that, again, they kept out of the history books, but you can't keep someone that made such a huge impact on the world. You can't keep them buried forever.
Right.
And we're seeing that some of the things that you've addressed in some of your shows this week and other weeks, you know, and when our story is put out, then it almost seems like a child in a candy store. When we realize, wow, we really did build America, not just physically, but intellectually and every other kind of Lee you can think of. So I'm happy today to talk about this, brother. It's going to highlight a lot of the issues that we face, not just in the institutional racism or systemic racism, but also in just being acknowledged for moving society forward. And you can see whenever you watch the movie of him or you hear people talking about him, like many of our ancestors, they had this certain type of pride, you know, in themselves and our people, and to have to live with your dignity being taken from you, but still have to walk around knowing you're a man or a woman. That I don't know if I say this all the time. I don't know if I could have done this. You know, they have to, brother, you already know, you know, most of us couldn't do it.
I know.
So they would have to step off the sidewalk when white people walked by. So we're going to really, really get into this brother today. I think he's not just out of my mouth, but out of several people in the medical profession has said he's one of the most important, if not the most important medical personality of the 21st century or the 20th century.
That's
or
awesome.
Both. That is, man, that's something to really, really consider. And finally, before we start out with your banner, it's so very important during this time when, again, we see this attack on Black people, on our integrity, on you know, not even acknowledging the things that we have done, not just for America, but for the entire world. It is like a slap in the face again. And one of the scenes in the movie, Something the Lord Made, he was standing on a step. And of course, Life magazine was there that took Dr. Blalock and the other 4 white doctors that were there in the operating room. I mean, they were there, but they didn't, you know, Vivien Thomas was the one that did everything in terms of actually walking him through, Dr. Blalock, through the biggest surgery of that time, of modern history, and opened the door for cardiac surgery. And there's over almost 2 million people a year that benefits from cardiac surgery. And they can thank this man right here, okay, for that. So if you want to start out with your banner, brother, we'll go ahead and deep dive into, you know, this great man here. I mean, I don't know of, and I was looking at one of the surgeons that he trained, and he said unequivocally that Vivien Thomas is the most important medical teacher in the United States history. Now, a surgical doctor said that, not me, not Neil Frazier.
Amazing.
That's amazing when you think that Dr. Blalock, who, and we'll tell the story, was responsible for, you know, giving him the chance. Actually, he could not have become the person he became without him. And he became chief of surgery of the most prestigious medical university in the United States, Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. So brother, tell us a little bit. Go ahead.
Well, you know, the banner always is always going to have who we're speaking on, the subject on the left side.
Yes.
That's the consistency that I wanted to have. And a picture is worth 1,000 words when you see in performing the surgery, and then you see the intricacy of the arteries and what's next. It actually shows a picture of the heart. You know, simple, but it gives a lot of context. And the name, I have to put it up there, and what he has done, the Black man who helped change modern heart surgery. And that's enough to make you question and say, hey, let me see a little bit more about this. Because a man like this and all of those who have come before him, female and male, who have these innate talents and abilities, this is one of the most remarkable ones, because it's almost like he just walked through the door and knew what to do. So later on, you know, he became the so-called doctor, but he was born that. And it makes me think,
Of course.
How many gifts from the Creator have we been given that have been lynched, that have been murdered, that have been discouraged, that have been blocked, where they couldn't help the entire humanity only because they have African blood in their bloodstream? Imagine that. You know, those who are the oppressors and the enemies of us simply because of us, not just our skin tone, but our energy and our melanin and what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we don't have the Neanderthal blood DNA in us. We're fully human. So they don't like us anyway with the warlike nature, and they don't like us to get the credit that we deserve. And a lot of us don't even expect it. Just know that the people who you help with what you have inside of you that was Creator given is going to get through anyway, because if it's meant to get through, it's going to come through. No matter how much opposition he had to go through, look at him now, where he gets the acknowledgement. The only last thing is that will the so-called algorithms favor pushing his name forward? So that's why it's important what you do, brother Neil Frazier, Metamorphosis, to bring this stuff to the forefront.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, it's a great collaboration. There are several, and yeah, I agree with the statement you just made. There are several things that really, really jump out at you with this type of. Here you have a black man, and we know this was during the Jim Crow era, and you have a famous doctor. And here they work together to produce arguably the greatest medical achievement in modern history.
Yep.
And you know, they had to do a tap dance between each other. And we'll go through this and how a situation like this, you know, like you were saying, there's, and I want people to go and read your description, that you always do a great description along with the banners with this, because there's so much about our people that we don't know. We just know the narrative that have been put out about him. But let's talk about this brother and go into him today.
Yes, brother.
Vivien Thomas was enormously important, arguably indispensable to the development of modern cardiac surgery, although he was historically undercredited for decades. The key distinction is that Thomas did not invent open heart surgery by himself. His greatest contribution was turning ideas about heart surgery into a procedure that could actually be performed safely, and then training the surgeons who carried the field forward. And see, this is so extremely important because, again, when we say things like black men are natural leaders, people don't know what that means.
Right.
Okay. This is what we mean. Having the ability to think outside the normal synapses of the brain. In other words, you don't have to be instructed in order to do something because, first of all, we're kinesthetic learners, meaning we can look at anything and figure it out. And Lance, you know, you used to get in trouble for that, right? But yeah, once they identify you have this gift, then they start to track you. I know this personally, and it goes into your record. Okay. So because he had this creator-given gift, he could have been discouraged, certainly during that time. He had ambitions, like many of us, to become a certain or achieve certain goals. But there's a greater lesson here, because what he learned was that he did not need the sanction of man in order to teach what the Creator had already put in him, sort of like Imhotep, to the world. So let's talk about what Thomas actually did. In the early 1940s, pediatric cardiologist Helen Taussig proposed a way to help babies with tetralogy of Fallot, the genital defect that caused the infamous blue baby syndrome. Surgeon Alfred Blalock believed the idea might work, but somebody had to determine exactly how to perform it. And see, this is the other thing about this gift that we have. Somebody had to perform it. You can come up with all the ideas you want to as a high IQ person, but you have to have that gift, okay, that the creator put inside of you with people with you melanin have naturally. And that's why I always say that if I'm playing in a game 7 in the NBA championship or in the Super Bowl, so this is the mistake that America, because they have held Black men and women for that matter, that could absolutely improve and have shown a record of this, improve our society in every way and move us forward, not going backwards, because that's against nature. And anyone that thinks that way causes this issue. All right, so here we go. So anyway, you guys can still hear me, Lance?
Yeah, I can see you, but the sound, I can still hear you too, but the sound kind of went down a little bit.
What happened.
All right.
I know what happened. When that happens, okay, I'm going to do something different here. Let's see. Okay, how about now?
Yeah, it's about the same, but we can still hear you. But let me just check something over here. But I know it's over there, but I want to check something over here too. Okay.
So is my voice low?
No, it's a little lower than what it was before. But let me listen through another device.
Okay. That's why I don't like to use my phone. I pretty much cut off everything, but you know, some things come through and then it knocks the sound.
Now it's buffering.
Okay. Let me hold on, Lance. Let me do this real quick, brother. I don't want to go out. So you guys can still hear me though, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, as long as you can hear me. Just like the last time, when it goes out, it knocks my Bluetooth out, the connection. So as long as you guys can hear me, that's what's important.
All right.
All right. So now again, we said you can conceptualize something, but you still have to have someone that has in order to accomplish it. And that person was Thomas. He created animal models that reproduce the physiology of the disease. Now, this was something else that was extremely important, Lance. He actually created the disease inside of dogs. Now, think about how amazing that is. He created this blue baby disease in dogs, okay, and also experimented for 2 years on them to perfect being able to run that artery, you know, around the heart to the pulmonary artery, okay, without opening the heart. And that was fascinating in itself. He spent nearly 2 years experimenting with and refining the operation. He developed the precise surgical techniques needed to connect the arteries without killing the animal. Now, I want to start out, Lance, with the picture of the show we did when they used our women as guinea pigs to establish the field of gynecology. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Now, here's something, and I was saying this to you earlier, Lance, that even the dogs that he operated on, okay, he didn't use humans. Even the dogs he operated on, they put them under. But our sisters, they didn't have any anesthesia at all. This was done with raw pain. And the point I want to make about this, where again you see this God goddess concept or king queen concept, where our sisters on one end of the polarity had to lead the way for women. And here you have on the other polarity, you have Dr. Vivien Thomas, who had to lead in the surgical area. But he was a lot more humane with animals than they were with our sisters, cutting them open. And you best believe she's under some type of shock right now. When somebody's cutting into you, into your breasts or wherever they're cutting with a knife. And I wanted to bring this picture for several reasons, but I'll just highlight two of them. Again, that Dr. Vivien Thomas having the humanity and the humility to know that he didn't even want to unalive a dog shows the difference between people who had no type of feeling about the pain that our sisters had to endure like this in order to move this field of gynecology forward. Okay. And again, like I always say, our people never get the just due, just like Dr. Vivien Thomas never got the just due for what he accomplished. So let's pick this up from here. He developed, here was the other thing too, okay? Not only did he create the physiology of the disease in the animals, he developed the precise surgical techniques needed to connect the arteries without killing the animals. Many of our sisters, like her, passed away just from shock alone. And they were discarded like a piece of trash afterwards. Where Vivien Thomas, it is said, only lost one dog in all the years that he performed this procedure. Think about that. The other thing is he designed and helped fabricate specialized surgical instruments because of the necessary tools didn't yet exist. So again, this man had no medical training and no medical school, and he created a stunt, okay, that was the forerunner, and he created a respirator. These particular, this type of surgical equipment hadn't even been invented yet, okay? So he had to conceptualize this while he was actually performing these procedures on these dogs. Think about the brilliance of that. By the time Blalock performed the first operation on a human infant in 1944, which is the blue baby disease, okay, that white babies suffered from, Thomas had performed the procedure on animals so extensively that he could stand behind Blalock, okay, and talk him through the operation. The resulting operation, the Blalock-Thomas-Taussig shunt, was a watershed moment. It gave children with previously essentially untreatable congenital heart disease a chance to survive and help establish cardiac surgery as a viable field. Johns Hopkins describes the 1944 operation as opening the door to modern heart surgery. Okay, the 1944 Blue Baby operation was performed on the blood vessels around the heart rather than opening the chambers of the heart itself. The operation, therefore, wasn't open heart surgery in the modern sense of using a heart-lung machine while operating inside a stopped heart. However, it was a crucial precursor to open heart surgery. Johns Hopkins cardiac surgery history specifically identifies Thomas's work with the Blue Baby operation alongside subsequent advances in cardiopulmonary bypass and the heart-lung machine as part of the development of modern cardiac surgery. All right, so you can go to another visual, brother. That's still one of the most powerful. That's why I keep that picture around. Okay, great. All right, that's our brother. That's the picture that
Yes.
that is in Johns Hopkins right now of him. His influence went beyond one operation. This may actually be the most underappreciated part of Thomas's legacy. Thomas became the supervisor of the Johns Hopkins Surgical Research Laboratories for 35 years. Very significant. He trained generations of surgeons in delicate vascular and cardiac techniques. Among the surgeons influenced by him, this is the one I was trying to think of earlier, Lance, was Denton Cooley, who went on to become one of the giants of cardiac surgery. Now think about this. Denton Cooley, there were several other ones. Over his 35-year period, he trained all of the leading young surgeons that would go on in fact, he was the pioneer, okay, of this in order for these surgeons to go on and become and establish this field as to what it is today in America. And during this operation, the leading doctors from around the world were there. And this one German doctor, he came in and he was congratulating Dr. Blalock and then Dr. Turing, the female. And then he turned to Dr. Vivien Thomas and said, Dr. Thomas, he said, no, just call me Mr. Thomas. And he was shocked. He said, you're not a medical doctor, you're not a surgeon? And they were fascinating, but certainly they have seen Black men in their parts of the world accomplish miracles before. I guarantee you that. So let's talk about the impact. It was direct. He helped develop and perform groundbreaking cardiovascular procedures. Also, it was indirect. He taught the next generation of surgeons how to perform sophisticated experimental and cardiac operations. Now, here you have a man that has this gift, and it was said he can walk in the room while the doctors were in training, and they would mention or ask him a question, and he didn't even have to be standing by them and give them the answer.
Wow.
Okay. This is, I mean, you're talking about a God walking amongst men.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why was he not better known? Now we're getting to it. Okay. Okay. So first of all, the statement that was made is that this was an enormous multiplier effect. In other words, he directly affected and indirectly affected as well, which very few people do. We see this in a lot of our inventors where, you know, they went on to teach subsequent generations as well. Dr. Valerie Thomas is one of them. But certainly, you know, when you think about 35 years, this man taught generations of cardiac surgeons in America. And I'm sure some from around the world came to Johns Hopkins to learn from this great man, just like when the Greeks learned about Imhotep, or who they called him Aesculapius, or a god. Okay, he was a god to them because Imhotep had designed surgical instruments that are still being used today. He wrote medical information in stone. Okay, and they said that Imhotep could do the same thing. He could look at something and tell you what needed to be done. Okay, so, and many of them, you know, again, stolen legacy, they hid this from the world. And so Hollywood made Imhotep into a mummy. The greatest genius that ever lived. They turned him into a mummy. And most of our children, when they go to the movies and they come back and they talk about Imhotep, they talking about him as a mummy, not knowing he is the greatest multi-genius that ever walked the earth. And they had a shrine that men went to, the only man in history where there was a shrine built where human beings, the Greeks, actually went there to worship him. That is a fact. So why was he not better known? The racial politics of the era was essential to understanding his story. Okay, and again, we go back to when they were given. So he had to sneak into. They had a big gala or event to honor Dr. Blalock and this groundbreaking operation, in which Vivien Thomas talked them through the operation, and we'll talk about that in a second. But he had to sneak in as a valet and stand behind some plants, right, where they would notice him. He had to put on a tuxedo, and you know, all the high IQ people, he was, you know, mentioning their contributions. They never mentioned Dr. Vivien Thomas. He never, and he confronted him back at the lab in Johns Hopkins. The other thing too that happened was he was the first Black man that wore a white laboratory coat. So a lot of, what's wrong with me? A lot of the Blacks that worked, you know, in maintenance and as a janitor and things like that, they would give him that funny look. You know how we get, how the system puts us against each other? And so one of the Black dudes one day, he looked at him because they all had to eat in the same hall. He said, "Oh, you think you're a big shot walking around here with that white lab coat?" And even the white people, when he used to walk through the back door, the corridors, walking through the corridors going to the lab, they would look at him like they'd just seen a ghost when he had that white lab coat on. And so the Black guy said, "You're walking around here like you're a big shot with that white lab coat on." He said, "But you're just a class C or something like that. I'm a class A, and I make more money than you," even though they were only making $12 a week. That's what Dr. Vivien Thomas was making. And of course, you know the story when they had the Great Depression and the crash, where him and all the Black folks lost all their money because the banks crashed. They're going to try to hit us with that again. But yeah, so he was very curious after the guy said, "Well, I make more money than you, and you still have to come through the back door just like all of us." So he went to the HR department And by this time, all of them knew who he was. He said, "What's a class C?" And she said, "Well, that's classified as maintenance, right? In other words, you're a janitor. That's what you're classified as." Although he is instructing the chief of surgery of Johns Hopkins, the most prestigious medical institution in America, in the top 3 in the world, or top 2. But yet here he's being treated, and this happens to our people all the time in all areas of 9 areas of human activity. Okay, so he finds out, and then he asks what the pay grade is, and he asked what an A class was. So he found out that he was being paid as a janitor, even though technically he was operating as or doing the functions of a laboratory assistant, way beyond that. Because when he first started out in Nashville, and he got hired at Vanderbilt as a laboratory technician or assistant, and that's where he met Dr. Blalock. And I think they worked together for 10 years there. When he found out, well, I got my golden goose egg, I got a genius black man here, okay, and I'm not letting him go. And this is my ticket to where I need to go. And he got appointed to the highest title that you could receive in the medical profession, as a chief of surgery at Johns Hopkins. And unbeknownst to the people at that time, it was really Dr. Vivien Thomas who was responsible for his elevation. And so when this wealthy family had this baby with this blue baby syndrome, they went to this female physician, Dr. Taussig or Taussig or whatever her name is, and forgive me for blowing her name, but it's something like that. But she had begun studying this disease with babies, and each one of them passed away within 6 months. So she had the physical results of the experiments, but then they couldn't move forward because you needed, again, someone that had the ability. Now, here's the other thing why, our brothers who work with their hands and can do things mechanically, they're taught to be looked at as low-grade brothers, okay? Now, he was a carpenter, his dad was a carpenter, and he needed these hands, okay? Something the Lord made in order to perform these diligent, be very steady with his hands, okay? And these operations, they require someone to be very steady. And he learned that from being a carpenter, that natural gift. That's why, again, I always say, you have to identify the gift in your child. Once you identify that, don't get stuck on trying to make them, and we live in this attention-driven age, okay? Teach them the principle, thank you, Creatrix, of delayed gratification, okay? Because when they learn that principle, they'll be able to develop and germinate their gift, okay? So this is on us now. We don't need the Department of Education because they can't teach our children. And the only thing they can teach them is to indoctrinate them to go into the Azul system to make them wealthier, okay? So, so we see the reason why he was not better known is because of the racial politics of the era are essential to understanding his story. Thomas was Black, and because of financial circumstances, he never completed college or medical school. At Johns Hopkins during the 1940s, Black people weren't admitted as medical students
or faculty, despite doing work comparable to that of a highly trained surgeon. Okay, think about that. That's what I was just talking about. And researcher. Thomas was officially classified as a laboratory technician and was paid substantially less than white employees doing comparable work. Blalock received much of the public credit for the operation, while Thomas's contributions were often absent from publications. Yet colleagues who actually worked with him recognized how extraordinary his surgical skill was. Johns Hopkins eventually honored him with an honorary Doctor of Laws degrees in 1976 and appointed him to the medical school faculty. All right, so how valuable was he? If Blalock was the surgeon who took the operation into the operating room, Thomas was the person who made it surgically possible. Okay, let me say that again. If Blalock, who was the chief of surgery at Johns Hopkins University, our most prestigious medical institution in America, if he was the surgeon who took the operation into the operating room, you know, in other words, he was the one that had the confidence that it could be done because he had an ace in the hole. He knew that there was someone that had this ability. Okay, and he knew that he would get all of the credit for it. So there was no, hesitation with him. He knew that this could be done. Okay, so Helen Taussig, okay, yeah, that's her name. Taussig supplied the crucial clinical insight. Blalock provided surgical leadership and took the enormous risk of performing it on a child. And Thomas did much of the experimental work that transformed the concept into a reproducible operation. And that's the point I was making right there, is that here you have a white surgeon from the South who was recognized as a chief surgeon in America, and got all of the credit for this groundbreaking operation. But yet it was Dr. Vivien Thomas who not only created the instruments necessary to perform this operation, but who also, so there's a scene in the movie, Something the Lord Made, where when they got into the operating room and you had all these surgeons from around the world sitting in there, in which the president of Johns Hopkins at the time, he didn't want them to conduct this operation. But again, when you know you have an ace in the hole, then you basically know that this can be done. So right before he started the operation, I don't know if he got spooked. I don't know what was going on in his head, but he didn't have the experiential knowledge and the ability, okay, to do what Dr. Vivien Thomas was able to do, the natural gift that he had. So he walks out of the operating room and everybody is like, oh, what's going on? You know, people gasping and where's he going? You know, the baby is under and everything. You see, the baby is still blue. And so he walks out, he goes up to the nursing station and he said, I want you to page Vivien right now. And so they said, well, we can't do that. We can only page medical faculty or doctors, in other words. And he went and grabbed that microphone. He said, Paige and Vivien Thomas, you got 2 minutes to get here in the operating room. And boy, he was in the cafeteria, you know, going over stuff or whatever he was doing. And he rushed out of there, put on his white coat, went into the operating room, and Dr. Blalock said, scrubbed up. He said, scrub up for what? He said, you're talking me through this. And so, as they say, the rest is history. Okay. So finally, just saying that Thomas was Blalock's assistant seriously understates his contribution. Modern historical accounts increasingly recognize him as a co-developer and one of the foundational figures in cardiac surgery. And there's a particularly striking irony. Thomas helped train many of the surgeons who subsequently made open heart surgery routine. And even though he himself was prevented by racial and economic barriers from becoming a physician in the conventional sense. So, you know, here we go again. Okay, brother, you can go with another visual. Here we see again, this is such an irony. Okay. This is such an irony because here you have a man who is training the leading. How about the next one with him in the lab? Yeah, okay, great. That's it. Now you see how the white people are turning around looking at him? Like, why is this Inja walking around with this white coat on? The other thing too is it's after the surgery, they were operation. Dr. Blalock was walking by where all the doctors were in this room talking, and one of them said, "Yeah, but he could have never done it without that ninja." And you know, they started laughing. So so here you see here, he was hired to clean the lab. He ended up inventing a surgery. Vivien Thomas's contribution to medicine was enormous. Although he never received a medical degree, his work helped establish the foundations of modern cardiac and pediatric heart surgery. Now let's talk about his major contributions. He helped develop the Blue Baby operation in 1944. Thomas worked with surgeon Alfred Blalock and cardiologist Helen Taussig to develop the procedure that became known as the Blalock-Taussig shunt. So you see, they removed his name from an actual shunt that he invented. Isn't that something? Which improved blood flow to the lungs in children with tetralogy of Fallot. Okay, got it. He performed the crucial experimental work. Thomas developed and practiced the surgical techniques extensively in laboratory animals. His work was so important that during the first operation on a child, he stood directly behind Blalock and guided him through the procedure. So here again, we see where this chief surgeon or chief of the Department of Surgery for Johns Hopkins would not have been able to perform this operation on his own. So I must say that here we look at, in a time when Black men were denied just basic human rights. Here you have a black man and a white man who had the status in society. He knew that he would rise as a result of the talents of this black man, or this gift that he had, natural gift. But they worked together to accomplish something that changed our world. And this is important to look at, because while you have all these white men that are angry and full of all this hate, the ones that recognize that we can still move forward as long as you're willing to work with people. Nobody has to be inferior to you in order to do that. Then we absolutely can change the conditions in our society. But we're not going to be able to do that when you have people attacking, or having your star players sitting on the bench in a game 7 in the NBA Finals. It's just where you're comfortable with having them to entertain you on a basketball court, on a football field, okay, or as a comedian, or in movies, or however they entertain you. But when it turns to their intellectual capacity, or beyond intellectual, their spiritual, their real spiritual capacity, okay, you do not want the world to know this. But again, when you plant a seed in the ground and it gets the proper water and it gets the sunshine it needs, and you plant it in fertile soil, there's nothing you can stand on top of where you planted the seed, but it might grow through your shoe. So you don't have the ability to stop that. That's the point. Let's look at a few other things he did. He helped open the door to modern heart surgery. Johns Hopkins describes the 1944 operation as a surgery that opened the door to today's heart surgery, and notes that its success eventually helped lead toward procedures such as coronary bypass surgery. He trained generations of surgeons. Thomas supervised surgical research at Johns Hopkins for about 35 years and taught numerous surgeons who went on to become leaders in American surgery. His influence extended far beyond one operation. His research also contributed to work on surgical shock, vascular surgery, and other cardiovascular problems. How big was his impact? A good way to put it is that Thomas was not simply an assistant to the doctors who performed the famous operation. He was one of the key scientific and technical innovators who made it possible. A medical history review concluded that he was a primary contributor to both the scientific foundation and surgical technique of the shunt. His legacy is especially significant because he accomplished this without being allowed to attend medical school. Legally, because financial hardships and racial barriers prevented him from following the path he originally intended. Johns Hopkins later awarded him an honorary doctorate and appointed him to its medical school faculty. So in historical terms, Vivien Thomas, get this, belongs among the important pioneers of 20th century cardiac surgery. His work helped transform congenital heart disease from something that was often fatal in infancy into something that surgeons could treat. And brother, let me tell you, this story is one of the stories that absolutely kind of sums up the situation that we find when someone can say, well, I don't want any more Black people in the military. Well, you're cutting your own throat.
Exactly.
When you begin to try to play like you're a god, when you don't have the spiritual abilities of a god, it's going to backfire, and the nation that you're leading is going to, as a result of this, is going to fail in all
That's right.
areas of human activities. And so that's where we find ourselves today. You know, when you constantly, you know, the best energy that you have in your nation,
Mm-hmm.
and we know why this is, because first of all, the counterfeit spirits, they don't like you. Okay, these entities, they don't like you, melanin, Black people. I don't care where you are, what you call yourself, you're connected to sun energy. And as long as you think that you are something else, when you're looking in the mirror and seeing what the creator creatrix made you, then that's what real failure is. I don't care how much fiat you have. And we saw this from our brother today. When that door was closed and he lost all his finances that he was saving up for 7 years, and Black people neighborhoods were decimated when these banks kept all their money. I personally know this story. It had a major impact, and he could have said, okay, well, you know, I'll just be a carpenter. I'll follow what my dad was. I'll be. And so here's the final thought about that. It's important for us, again, this is why they divide us in so many ways, or the Willie Lynch theory. It's important that we pass down our genetic memory bank to subsequent generations. That is extreme, because each generation is chosen to be a part of the plan that is against the creator creatrix plan. You are. That's why all the focus is on you, and why people say that you are the biggest, that our young people is the biggest threat to their Azul plan, because they are. But when they are told that they're only thugs and gangsters, and they only have the ability to twerk, and they don't see themselves as kings and queens of the earth, then we got a problem. And I think I'll end with that, brother.
Yes, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm here.
Yes, sir.
With my pen and
You
pencil,
know,
taking down notes.
oh yeah, oh yeah. We are, you know, and so the ball is thrown back in our court now.
Mm-hmm.
So what you going to do with it? Are you going to continue to rely on other people and continue to make these excuses? And just because you see a brother, a sister not riding around in a Rolls Royce, you're going to count their lives out, when that could be the very person that has been. And there's a script that says, beware of, I don't know if I'm saying it directly, it doesn't matter, the thought is
Right.
what counts. Beware of strangers, because you could be entertaining angels unaware.
Mm-hmm.
See, you've been totally hoodwinked, and you see somebody, and I think on YouTube they do a skit similar to this thought, where these people with a lot of fiat, they'll act like they're homeless, and then, you know, people will reject them, and then the first person that wants to help them and look at their humanity, then they get a huge, you can call it a blessing or whatever you want to call it. So we got to change our way of thinking and looking at each other, because we already have in our community. Here's the crazy thing about it, brother, and I'll end on this. We already have everything we need to pivot out of this Azul system, brother, we have it. But again, it comes down to these childish beefs that we have. And they don't have to put forward Agenda 2025 or 20, whatever they call it, or HR or Proposal 46 or whatever it is. They don't have to put this into motion. Our people do it for them.
Right.
All right, my brother. Well, hold on to the belts, and peace and blessing to you and the family. And let's continue to put our history out here for our people. And you guys have a productive week. I look forward to seeing you again next week.
The King of Mondays.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, brother.
Okay, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We'll be coming back with some more stuff tonight. I'll take a little break, get back on it. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all your participation. I truly, truly love it. Much love, y'all.